You've been told to be patient, to be understanding, to forgive, tolerate, and let it go. But what if that's exactly why your soul is exhausted? What if the pain you carry isn't from what they did, but from what you kept tolerating? Carl Jung didn't believe in blind acceptance. He believed in radical honesty. And some behaviors, he believed, are not just unhealthy, they're soul-destroying. So this isn't a self-help checklist, it's a wake-up call. Because the most dangerous people are the ones you let stay too long in the name of being good. They never take responsibility. Every argument becomes your fault. Every consequence is something you caused. Every moment of discomfort is something you should have prevented. And at first you try to be understanding. You give space. You speak gently. You try to hold them through it. But Carl Jung warned us, when someone projects their shadow, their unresolved inner pain, onto you, they're not seeking healing. They're avoiding it. They're using you as a mirror, then smashing the reflection. And the longer you accept the blame, the more you betray your own clarity. Because if you're not careful, you'll spend your life apologizing for other people's unprocessed trauma. And that's not empathy, that's self-abandonment dressed as kindness. They cross your line, they poke the wound, they make the same joke you've asked them to stop making. And when you finally speak up, you're met with, "You're overreacting. Relax, it's not that deep. Wow, you've changed." Yes, you have changed. Because what Jung understood, and what modern culture forgets, is that boundaries aren't just personal preferences. They're sacred. They're your nervous system saying, "I will not be harmed here." And when someone repeatedly mocks those boundaries, they're not confused. They're testing you, seeing how much you'll take, how quiet you'll stay, how far they can stretch your tolerance before it snaps. And every time you let it go, you're not being mature. You're being trained to betray yourself. You don't need to explain your pain 12 different ways. You don't need their permission to protect your peace. You need one sentence, no more. You try to share something real, a moment of clarity, a piece of vulnerability, a little glimpse into the work you've been doing on yourself. And suddenly, the temperature changes. They laugh, they dismiss it. They say you're being dramatic or reading too much into things. But Jung knew this response. He called it a defense mechanism, a desperate attempt to stay in the shallow end of life. Because if they go deeper, they'll have to feel. And if they feel, they'll have to change. And if they change, they might lose the comfort of who they pretend to be. So instead, they attack your depth because your evolution makes them feel inadequate. Your introspection makes them feel exposed. And they'd rather mock your journey than face their own stillness. Here's the truth. If someone needs you to be smaller so they can stay safe, they were never walking with you. They were hiding behind you. Every time they fall, you catch them. Every time they break, you build them back up. Every time they spiral, you rearrange your life to hold them steady. And at first, it felt noble. You felt useful, important, even spiritual. But over time, it starts to rot. Because Jung saw this dynamic for what it truly is, a shadow bond. It's not connection, it's mutual avoidance. They avoid responsibility by falling apart. You avoid abandonment by saving them. It looks like love, but it's actually fear, fear dressed up as compassion. And the cost? You become resentful, exhausted, emotionally bankrupt, because you weren't built to carry someone else's healing for them. You can love someone, support someone, believe in someone, but you cannot walk their path while abandoning your own. At some point, helping becomes enabling. Support becomes self-sacrifice and care becomes codependence. Let go, not because you don't love them, but because you finally started loving yourself. You've tolerated too much, not because you're weak, but because you were taught that love means endurance. But Jung believed the opposite. He believed that boundaries are where real love begins. Not the fake love that costs your sanity, but the kind that starts with truth. In the next part, we'll go deeper into the consequences of silent tolerance, the psychological traps that keep you stuck, and why saying enough isn't selfish, it's sacred. You tell yourself it's not worth the fight. You rationalize they didn't mean it. You tell yourself you're being the bigger person. You try to keep the peace. But inside, you're exhausted, irritable, detached, because there's a cost to swallowing truth. Carl Jung once said, "Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment, and especially on their children, than the unlived life of the parent." But that unlived life doesn't begin with some dramatic moment. It starts here, in these silent agreements to tolerate what violates you. The more you suppress, the more disconnected you become. The more you rationalize, the more you forget what's real, and the more you appease, the more you forget who you are. Tolerance becomes the mask. Underneath it, resentment, grief, a quiet kind of rage that has nowhere to go. And that rage, it doesn't disappear, it leaks out into your relationships, your health, your spirit. The world sees you smiling, but inside, you're screaming. They don't yell, they don't threaten, they just sigh when you say no. They act distant when you set a limit. They remind you, in small, subtle ways, that you're only lovable when you're compliant. And so, you bend, you cancel your plans, you silence your needs. You convince yourself that keeping them happy is the same thing as being kind, but it's not. Carl Jung believed the most manipulative dynamics aren't explosive. They're invisible. They don't come with bruises. They come with guilt. And guilt, when weaponized, becomes a leash. It keeps you performing roles you didn't choose. It keeps you emotionally hostage, and worst of all, it makes you betray yourself while thinking you're doing the right thing. That's the trick. It's not obvious, it's quiet. It feels like love, but it's control wrapped in dependence. You're not obligated to meet someone's emotional needs if it means abandoning your truth. That's not selfish, that's sacred self-respect. They cry, they confess, they say, "This time I mean it." And maybe for a while they even try. They read the book, go to therapy, speak the words you waited years to hear. But then it slips, the pattern returns, and you're back where you started. Why? Because some people don't change, they rehearse change. Jung believed that words without action are the ego's way of avoiding responsibility. You say, "They're trying," but are they really? Or are they performing effort to keep access to you? True transformation is painful. It demands death, the death of an identity, of an ego, of the comfort in dysfunction. But the false transformer avoids that pain. They use your hope as fuel, your forgiveness as currency, your presence as their excuse not to evolve. And if you keep waiting, you become complicit, not because you're bad, but because your empathy became your cage. You don't need more promises. You need a boundary so firm it becomes a mirror, not for what they say, but for who they actually are. Here's the trap no one talks about. The longer you tolerate the intolerable, the more you start to believe you deserve it. You tell yourself, this is just how life is. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe love always hurts. And with each rationalization, you shrink. Jung called this the betrayal of the self, the quiet dismantling of your truth to keep the illusion alive. Because when you can't change them, you change you. You adjust your expectations, you lower your standards, you silence your instincts, until eventually you don't even know what's unacceptable anymore. It all starts to feel normal, but normal doesn't mean healthy, and familiar doesn't mean safe. Sometimes the deepest act of healing is saying, "I won't do this anymore," even if they call you cold, even if they say you've changed, even if you have to do it alone. They won't like the new you, the one who says no, the one who no longer justifies, explains, or stays quiet to keep things easy. But Jung didn't care about being liked. He cared about being whole. Now let's look into the psychology of reclaiming your soul, how to confront emotional manipulation without guilt, and why protecting your energy is the most rebellious, powerful thing you'll ever do. They expect instant replies, unlimited time, emotional access on demand. They act like your energy is a resource they're owed, not a gift you choose to give. And when you take space, they sulk, they guilt trip. They say things like, "You've changed," or "You used to be there for me." But Jung would see through that. He warned us that people who haven't individuated, who haven't formed a real self, will cling to others as a source of identity. They don't know where they end and you begin. So your boundary feels like abandonment. Your space feels like betrayal. And instead of growing, they cling harder. You cannot build a free life with someone who treats your freedom like a threat. You are not a therapist on call. You are not a rescue mission. You are not a perpetual source of comfort for someone unwilling to find it in themselves. Stop answering out of guilt. Stop showing up out of fear. Let them learn the power of missing you. You feel drained after every conversation. You walk on eggshells. You rehearse your sentences in your head before speaking. And worst of all, you doubt yourself. Maybe I am being too emotional. Maybe I did make them act that way. Maybe I'm just too much. This is not love. It's psychological erosion. Jung taught that gaslighting, though he didn't use that word, is a product of shadow projection. The manipulator cannot face their own darkness, so they twist yours. They need you confused, unsure, dependent. Because a confused person doesn't leave. A confused person keeps trying harder. But clarity is your birthright, and any dynamic that requires you to abandon your inner compass is not spiritual. It's soul theft. You don't need more self-improvement. You need space. From them, from the distortion, from the noise in your head that tells you peace means staying silent. They speak in enlightened terms. They quote spiritual teachers. They say things like, "You're not vibrating high enough. Maybe this is just your ego reacting. I'm only being honest. You should be grateful." At first it sounds wise, evolved, truthful, but over time it starts to feel wrong. Because it's not used to liberate, it's used to dominate. Jung warned that spiritual language can become a new mask for the ego, even more dangerous because it looks like growth. But if someone uses consciousness to invalidate your pain, if they use ego as a weapon against your feelings, if they claim superiority while creating emotional chaos, that's not wisdom. That's manipulation with incense. You are not crazy for feeling the twist in your gut, for noticing that enlightenment is being used to shame, silence, and dominate. True spirituality makes space for humanity. False spirituality demands your silence in the name of peace. And peace that requires your erasure is just oppression with pretty words. They always show up, always offer help, always look like the perfect friend, partner, healer. But slowly, something feels off. Their help comes with strings. Their kindness comes with control. And your gratitude is never enough. Jung believed that the hero archetype can become a trap, not just for those who worship it, but for those who perform it. The narcissist hides behind benevolence. They build a story where they're always the savior and you're the one who needs saving. And the moment you stop needing them, the mask cracks. They become cold, dismissive, punitive, because they were never helping you to help. They were helping you to own you. So you shrink, you play weak. You avoid strength, because strength means disconnection. This isn't generosity. It's domination disguised as devotion. And the longer you play that game, the more you lose touch with your own power. You've been trained to stay quiet, to accept, to see both sides. But Jung's path wasn't about seeing both sides. It was about seeing clearly, and when you see clearly, you must act. In the final chapter, we bring it home. How to stop tolerating pain dressed as peace. Why your no is your most sacred yes. And the ultimate choice Jung believed you must make if you ever want to live free from the emotional predators of this world. You've been told no is rejection, that it closes things, ends things, hurts people. But Jung understood something deeper. Your no isn't about them. It's a declaration of who you're willing to become. Every no is a yes to clarity, to dignity, to life without emotional chains. And when you say it, fully, cleanly, unapologetically, you're not being cruel. You're choosing your soul over your silence. This doesn't make you hard. It makes you honest. Because if you never say no, you never get to find out who you really are when you're no longer being shaped by guilt. This is where most people get trapped. They're not that bad. They're trying. They have a good heart. But Jung would tell you that's irrelevant. People don't need to be evil for their behavior to be damaging. What matters isn't their story. It's what happens to you when you're around them. Do you shrink, doubt yourself, feel drained, small, unclear? Then stop looking at their intentions and start looking at the impact. Because even good people can cross boundaries out of need, guilt you out of fear, silence you in the name of love. You're not judging them, you're choosing you. You're not condemning them, you're conserving your energy. This is not about demonizing anyone. It's about refusing to hand your sanity over in exchange for their comfort. Jung's most important idea wasn't about the shadow or the archetypes. It was about individuation, the process of becoming a whole human being. But individuation doesn't happen in community, not at first. It begins in the separation, from roles, from masks, from relationships that keep you locked in false peace. Because you cannot become yourself while staying addicted to approval. You cannot awaken while trapped in dynamics that require your unconsciousness to function. And you cannot integrate your truth while tethered to people who only love the version of you that bends. So if it feels lonely, good. If it feels painful, that means you're doing it right. Because becoming whole requires a kind of sacred solitude. It's not abandonment, it's emergence. Here's what they won't tell you. If you do this work, if you really stop tolerating the unacceptable, you'll lose people. You'll disappoint them, shock them, maybe even enrage them. But Jung didn't care about being liked. He cared about being real, because the world doesn't need more agreeable, nice, half-awake people who smile through abuse. It needs people who are so clear they become untouchable, so honest they become unmanageable, so self-possessed they become immune to emotional blackmail. You are not here to please. You're here to pierce the illusion. You are not here to belong to everyone. You are here to belong to yourself. And the moment you do, you'll see it clearly. What you once called love was really fear. What you once called kindness was really self-erasure. And what you once called tolerance was really forgetting who you are. No more. Let's make this real. What's one behavior you're no longer willing to tolerate? No matter who it comes from, write it in the comments. Don't just think it, declare it. Your words might be the permission someone else has been waiting for. And if this helped you remember who you are, give it a like. It tells the algorithm to show this truth to more people who are still stuck in silence. For more bold, soul-cutting psychology like this, join our community of people walking towards the light. Subscribe and click the notification bell to never miss new insights. Until next time, keep shining, not to be seen, but to see.